I want to welcome all of you this morning, or actually this afternoon, for our four-way speech contest. On behalf of the Rowlett and Lakeside and Garland Rotary Club, we welcome all of you, and filming for the future folks. I'd like to also thank you all the teachers and coaches who attended as they prepared their students for today's contest.
I want to thank everyone for attending, participating, and volunteering to work. Today, the three clubs are pleased to host three students. Those three students have the rules. They've gone over the rules. They know what the expectations are. They understand that the judges will be adding per category. They've had the categories a while so that they could look and brush up whichever categories they need. And the timekeeper has gone over what the expectation is as far as showing them what time it is and when to quit, when it's close and when it's time to actually stop, which of course is up to you because there's a 5-point penalty for under and a 5-point penalty for over. So it is up to the contestant as to whether or not they choose to stop early or choose to go over. So it's just remember that it's a 5-point penalty. The contestants have drawn their numbers and they are ready to present. Hello. Are you good? Okay.
I don't see color. This was a statement I heard the other day, so bold and clear that it immediately caught my attention. I turned over to the boy who uttered these words and began to ask questions and spark a conversation about the perception of light and how interestingly it refracted off of different objects, and he cut me off. He stopped me midway to say that I was mistaken, and he could indeed see color. He had just been referring to something else. He said that it didn't matter whether my skin was pink, black, yellow, blue, green, or orange because he couldn't see skin color. And as I sat there, pondering upon how he could have possibly come to that conclusion, I thought of the four-way Rotary test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? The first question I must bring to attention is it the truth? Is it true that denying you see one's skin color a systemic microaggression that could contribute to racial discrimination? There are three main types of color blindness, all resulting from photopigment defects that respond differently to red, green, and blue lights. According to the National Eye Institute, there is red-green color blindness being the most common, which is then followed by blue-yellow color blindness, and lastly, the most rare, being the absence of color vision, complete and total color blindness. So, with 99% of people with color blindness not necessarily being blind to color, how has society come to use this term, color blindness, so colloquially? Today I aim to analyze the social self-diagnosis of color blindness with these questions. As defined by activist Alice Walker in an essay that appeared in her 1983 book, colorism is defined as the prejudicial or preferential treatment of same-race people based solely on color. One way this transcends race appears when sociologist Margaret Hunter writes in her book Race, Gender, and the Politics of Skin Tone appear when lighter-skinned Mexican Americans earn more money, complete more years of education, live in more integrated neighborhoods, and have better mental health than do darker-skinned Mexican Americans. Denying you see color, whether in relation to something intangible or physical, it steers the conversation away from the root of the problem. Is it fair that between the years 1999 and 2011, the National Center for Health Statistics recorded that Native Americans between the ages 25 and 44 created combined 12.5 per million per population of victims of police killings? This is the second question we must bring to attention, and we see that there is a disproportionate effect on people when you say you don't see color, whatever that means. For white Americans, or perhaps whites in general, there was no clear disregard other than that of their racial makeup, of course. But for people of color, this is a loaded statement. Not only are you denying their ethnicity, but you're denying any disparity associated with that ethnicity. 1 in every 15 African American men and 1 in every 36 Hispanic men are incarcerated, in comparison to 1 in every 106 white men. You are denying simultaneously a people, a culture, and an experience and a system that has been plaguing communities of color for decades. Next, will it build goodwill and better friendships between those of contrasting ethnicity? To boost camaraderie amongst your peers, you might say that you acknowledge the discrimination that they face due to their race, but deny any differences as to further assert general sameness. In fact, this might prove to sever relationships. The best type of response to this adversity would not be to deny any differences, but would be to accept them and address them and say that because of these dissimilarities, we still belong side by side. By not denying the differences in skin color, you further deny the like goes with like mentality that we've learned since youth, and we begin to assume otherwise. Lastly, we ask, will it be beneficial to create an environment keen to the natural differences of others? By not denying the evident differences in ethnicity and skin tone, we address problems that are prevalent. In 2013, a study done by researchers Lance Hannon, Sarah Britch, and Robert DeFina say that darker-skinned African-American females are 3 times as likely to be suspended at school than their lighter-skinned African-American counterparts. These situations or these conditions can only be mended after we first address the problems and treatment and differences of those with contrasting ethnicity, and then begin to mend those, and then tend to affix them. To concede to the perpetuation of comments or small statements that seem minute at the time, like, "I don't see color," is to concede to the perpetuation of these societal ills. Thank you.
We will introduce the judges formally between the last contestant. So, contestant number 2, please come forth.
Are you guys ready? I'm a history buff. I love politics, and in a few years, I'll be old enough to vote. This past election was the first time I was really able to follow and understand the political process. I followed the election, I watched the debates, and sadly, I saw the aftermath on social media, and I have been so disappointed in my fellow humans. Have you ever heard the phrase, think before you speak? Maybe the modern day rendition ought to be, think before you post something political. With the importance of the recent election and all of the media hype, it's no wonder that people want to talk about it. It seems like every time you go on social media, you see yet another post about something political. And we live in such a fast-paced world with all kinds of access to instant media and news. And every time we read or learn something, we like to share it on all sorts of social media venues like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But what if what you're posting is not actual news? What if it's not facts? Or what if it's just meant to upset those who feel differently than you do? So before the next time I go on social media and have to read about the elites, the uncaring Republicans, or the libertard left, I wish I could just ask the whole world to apply the Rotary four-way test to the things we think, say, or do before they make a political post on social media. Although the internet and the creation of social media came decades after Rotary adopted the test, it is a perfect measure of ethical use of social media. The first thing we must address is it the truth? When looking for truth in politics, we often look at how true the facts are. And in this recent election, we have seen a rise in the number of fake news stories and the use of social media to spread these stories. For example, from WTO5 News, what if you read a headline that said, "Pope Francis shocks world, endorses Donald Trump for president"? How is someone like me supposed to know that WTO5 News is not a real news outlet like WFAA is here in Dallas? And if you don't know the history of the Catholic Church, you may not know that the Pope does not openly endorse American political candidates. So how are we supposed to be able to decipher real news from fake news? Or from WNDR News, you read a headline that said, Hillary Clinton, ISIS leaders call for American Muslim voters to support Hillary Clinton. I mean, I read it on the internet, so it's got to be true, right? What? Not everything on the internet's true? Well, that's alarming because according to a recent Stanford study, 62% of U.S. adults get their news from social media. We know that there's a lot out there that isn't true, but is it fair to the political process to try to sway people's opinions based on fake and false information? This brings me to the next point of the test. Is it fair to all concerned? Yes, it is totally fair to talk about politics. It's part of our First Amendment right, and it's at the heart of our nation. But it is not fair to try to sway people's opinions with the use of misinformation and fake news stories. According to a Stanford article posted in January 2017, the results of the election were thought to have been skewed through the news for the use of fake news stories and the use of social media to spread these news stories. I saw the effects of one of these fake news stories just the other day. I was sitting in class with my friends, and one of my friends showed me a political post on Twitter. I instantly recognized that it was fake news, but before I could say anything, all of my friends erupted in arguing and name-calling. This post had gotten the inflammatory response that the poster had wanted. And come to find out, it was all over something that wasn't even true. This brings me to the next point of the test. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? In a recent NPR article written by Sam Sanders, he points out two major developments seen on social media. First, on Facebook, there always seems to be someone posting in a bragging manner about deleting or blocking people based on political disagreements. And second, on Twitter, people always seem to get some kind of public shaming or backlash for disagreeing with the views of other users. In a New York Post article, they cited a Pew study that stated that 25% of Facebook users have blocked somebody over political disagreements. We tend to react so quickly on social media that we often lose the civility that fosters goodwill and better friendships. Instead of celebrating and discussing our differences, we simply block or unfriend those who feel differently than we do. Is this truly beneficial to us as individuals? And is it truly beneficial to us as a society? This brings me to the last point in the test. Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Now, not everything posted on social media has a negative or malicious intent when it is posted or shared. For example, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. This started out as just some videos of people pouring ice water on their heads, but it spread into a viral internet phenomenon that raised awareness and education about ALS, and ultimately raised $115 million for the ALS Association. What if we found a political post that does this kind of good, that spreads good like the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, that is truly beneficial to all concerned? We can do this if we as a nation simply slow down and stop to think before we make a political post. If we apply these simple yet life-altering words of the four-way test, we can make our nation stronger and more united. Thank you.
Thank you, contestant number 3.
Okay. Oh, do I have it?
No, you don't have to.
Okay. My dad is the best dad I could have ever asked for. He's strong, confident, and highly intimidating. It's kind of intense having a cop for a dad, and it helped me grow as a person. He raised me and my sister to be just as strong and intimidating as he was, but he also taught us to not really show our emotions when obstacles come our way. His favorite quote was, "Walk it off." When we would twist our ankles, he would tell us, "Walk it off." Or whenever we would scrape our knees, he would tell us, "Walk it off." One time I got the flu, and he definitely told me to walk it off. Long story short, I couldn't. This is the same story for most young men and women. They deal with fathers that encourage them to be stoic in the way of obstacles. But this can prove to be a negative way of life. It can encourage the inability to control their aggression and their anger, and it can lead to hazardous effects, violence, pretty much. So, is it the truth? According to keepschoolsafe.org, 1 out of 3 students before they reach high school have already been in a fist fight. 1 out of 7 students seven of these altercations have happened at a school. This shows how students are unable to actually express their emotions in a positive way. They feel as though they need to mask their anger or their sadness, and they aren't able to express them in a way that is beneficial to other people. So, is it fair? Imagine that you were on a soccer team and you were basically wanting to get playing time, and you were working extremely hard but getting no results. Well, after a game, you're heated and you go home and you lash out on your younger sibling. This isn't fair to the younger sibling because they're just an innocent bystander, but you've basically put your negative emotions that you feel, and you've projected them onto another person because you don't know how to deal with your own emotions because of your stoicism. This is only one of the many negative outcomes that can come from not knowing how to address these sensitive emotions that we're constantly being shamed from. So, will it build goodwill and better friendships? In my own experience of having to overcome stress, anxiety, and depression and not being able to show those emotions because of how I was raised, I've ended up pretty much having emotional breakdowns. One time in school, after getting out of an argument with a friend, I pretty much had a breakdown. It was triggered by something so small I can't even remember, but the impact was large and it ended up changing my life forever. I basically ran into the restroom and pretty much screamed silently and cried really hard, but luckily I decided to go to the counselor's office, where I got help and treatment for my depression that I had never told my parents about, pretty much. It was the same way of masking that is impacting other students in the same way. I wasn't able to show my emotions, so I ended up bottling them up until they were released in a very negative, hazardous way. Luckily, no one was in the line of fire whenever I released these negative emotions, but it could have ended up much worse if I had been around a family member. But luckily, I knew how to compact it. But this can be the same case for a lot of other people who don't know how to release their emotions in positive ways, and it leads to violence or extreme aggression. So, will it be beneficial to all those that it concerns? The answer to this is simple. Yes, because we value our own emotional being. We like to be able to enjoy life and evaluate problems that we have within our lives through showing emotion. So it's impossible to raise our children as stoic and believe that they will live the same happy and get the same enjoyment out of life as we will. So in order to do that, we must not raise our children to be stoic, but to show their emotions when it's necessary and learn how to express them in a positive way. So I'll leave you with a quote by Marcus Zuzak, the author of The Book Thief. He said, imagine smiling after being slapped in the face. Now imagine smiling 24 hours a day. This quote shows that being stoic is not a practical way of living, but we encourage our children in our society to live that way and to not ever really show their weak emotions. It's the truth that we value our emotions and that they're necessary for positive expression. It's not fair to expect stoicism out of our children. It'll build goodwill and better friendships, because once you're able to express your emotions in a positive way, you can impact others also in a positive way, because you feel better about yourself and you don't have so much pent-up anger. And last of all, it will be beneficial to all those that it concerns, because we will be able to impact others' lives in the same way that we would like for others to help us.
and I'm going to read this because I want to say all the right words. The purpose of the contest. The purpose of the four-way test speech contest. First time I said that, I was like, ooh, that's a whole lot. Is to foster ethics in everyday life as well as in business. The contest is designed to introduce high school students to the Rotary principles of ethics and service, and to involve local Rotary clubs with the youth of their communities. It also is aimed at encouraging young people to learn to express themselves well in public. In nearly every profession, the ability to express one's thoughts and ideas clearly, concisely, and persuasively is an important skill. Representative, as chairperson for each of the clubs, we had a decision to make, and several of them already asked, oh, do we get one each? Well, it kind of looks like we do, because we had 3 very good representatives of our communities, and each of you will represent one of the clubs at the district contest.